Hey there, welcome back to another episode of my devlog for the making of Darkness Blooms. This episode is going to be a bit different. I'm going to be focusing on philosophy, lore, story. I'm going to give you some background of the individual characters. It's not going to be about gameplay, it's going to be about the big picture ideas and philosophies behind Darkness Blooms and really, I guess, why I'm making it. Before we get started, I give a special thanks to all the new subscribers. Thanks for joining, thanks for watching. And thank you to No, Alex, Epic Lemon, Big Poi, Dad Dev, Han Yoon, Said Eats Melons, Billy Eats Cookies, Manuel, and absolutely thank you guys so much for your comments. It's really been useful. With that said, I guess let's get into it. My personal background is I have degrees in philosophy and politics and psychology, which will no doubtly explain a lot of my perspective on the way I'm making this game. Uh, uh, you'll definitely see parts of all of that. The main thing I'm trying to play around with is uh, big false dichotomies and the way they interact with each other. The way that the ideology on the top end has a lived experience for individuals who are caught in the mess of it. And a huge part of the game will be focusing on individuals' trauma. Uh, I guess I can explain that better by giving an example. Um, so let's start with player one. Player one is you. You will name player one. There will be a male and female version and non-gendered version. This is your character. So when player one comes up, the emotions are going to be a little bit more subdued. I want, I don't want the game to tell you how to feel about how the main character feels because that's your reaction to the way the world is coming up around you. So you grow up in a small town that you find incredibly boring. You have one festival each year, and it's the only celebration that goes on. You know everybody's name. There's no opportunity to grow. There's no opportunity to be a hero. You grow up knowing your father was a hero. Everybody in town knows your dad's name, and there's this giant sword that's too heavy for you that sits over top of the fireplace. So all you want is an opportunity to be a hero, to have some conflict in the world so that you can rise up and show the world the kind of person you really are. You grow up with your best friend, KK, who has a very different perspective. She's in love with life. She's happy just the way things are. Everybody knows each other. People look out for each other. People drop off pie for you. Like everybody in the small town loves each other. And her favorite time of year is this festival, this Blossom Festival. So the game starts off with her calling your name, and she's lightheartedly teasing you as she wants you to catch up. She's taking you to her favorite spot to watch the Blossom season, a big event. So during Blossom season, the whole town comes together. People are baking food, they're giving it away, they're celebrating, they're taking the time off to just be with family and friends and laughing and singing. And you're a bit jaded to all of this because you see these people every day, all day. There's nothing special about this. The most exciting thing that happens in your small town is when some leaves blow through the air. But you are going to support your friend who's going to show you that the world is a lot more beautiful than you let it seem in your head. So you're going down this very long. This is going to be gameplay too. This is hopefully what the demo will be if I can get it all together. You're going to be walking down forest path, and KK is teasing for you to hurry up and all that stuff. It's just nice banter, nice childhood banter. Uh, and as you're going along, there'll be a stick on the ground, and if you click on it, you pick up the stick, and if you click again, you can swing the stick around. And KK will make fun of you for playing a hero and how she'll get into the philosophy a bit of the only way your dreams come true if you want to be a hero is you need bad guys. You want the world to be violent. You want people to be kidnapped so that you can be their rescuer. And that the world is great and the world doesn't need heroes. But you still walk along with your stick, um, following her. I want the tutorials of the game to be very much uh, like hands off. I don't want you to read press X to swing the stick. you're gonna walk, you're gonna see a stick, you're gonna know to press X, and it's gonna pick it up, and then you're gonna swing, and you're gonna know what to do with that. And then if you see a mushroom, you can walk up and swing at that mushroom if you want. So I want to be as hands off as possible for that kind of stuff. I think it's called passive learning in game design. Um, so it's a long path. You go, you're chatting, and eventually you get to the top, where you can see over the village, and you can see this massive tree that's just got every color on it. And KK was worried that you weren't going to get there in time, that the big gust was going to come, and all the best leaves were going to come off the tree. But you get there, and there's going to be a slight cinematic where you just get to see all of the leaves go flying through the air and off as far as you could possibly see. And there's this really nice moment with you and KK, some calm and quiet, and then you start to hear screaming. You hear the village just erupt in chaos. So you jump up and you quickly start running back, and you're running back the same path that you were running on the way up. But now the little mushrooms that you were attacking all seem alive, and they're trying to attack you. But you have your stick, so you can fight them off a bit. And as you go farther and farther, trying to get closer to the village, you can hear your mom scream out, and you keep going and you keep running, and then a roar erupts as you look behind you, and a bear has gotten out between you and KK. A giant, massive bear. Its eyes are glowing green. It's foaming at the mouth. KK is on one side. You're on the other. Your stick's not going to do anything. You run towards the bear and you black out, and that's the intro of the game. That's the hopefully the demo. Later on in the game, spoiler, you do meet back up with KK, but she's not the same. She survived because her uncle found her and trained her to be strong and tough. And she lost all of that childhood wonder that you see in the first game. She's completely shut off. She doesn't know how to make friends. She doesn't know how to be vulnerable. She wants to make sure that she's as tough as possible all the time so she can never be hurt like that again. KK lost both of her parents that day as the forest came alive with monsters, and so did you. Your father had already died in the Great War, died as a hero, but your mother died that day. We have a little bit of a jump ahead in time, and then you kind of piece these things together a little bit in retrospect. So yeah, heavily influenced by trauma. In other places, you've got the flower girl, who her trauma comes mostly before all this. Her name is Ellie. We've named her. Her parents were both very sick when she was young. When she was younger, she's still very young, and she was in charge of like their medicine and trying to take care of them. They kept getting worse and worse, and there was more than Ellie could handle. And Ellie's grandmother came and took her away shortly before her parents passed away. And she's got this big chip on her shoulder that if she could figure out the medicine, if she was better at that, if she could have taken care of them, maybe they would have been okay. She hides her trauma a lot better than KK. KK seems very brooding on the surface now. Ellie will be blunt and has a strong personality, but she doesn't seem miserable unless you make her focus and think about those things. Nixer. Nixer grew up an orphanage. He is a militant atheist. He's part of a group called the Unwatched. I don't know if you can see it very well on here. I can zoom in. He has a tattoo that is just a red eyeball with a line through it. If you've seen the church characters in this, the white hooded people with the blue, they're part of the Watched. They're part of the religious group. And Nixer thinks it's all corruption. He doesn't believe in God. He also doesn't believe in morality. He thinks morality is invented by those in power to control those who don't have power. And as he grew up in an orphanage, and he grew up a little bit older and stronger and taller than the other kids in the orphanage, he kind of became the protector, and he sees how terrible the world treats them. And his name is Nixer because he robs them. He'll steal from the rich to give to the poor. So to him, it's not good or evil. It's taking care of those who need to be taken care of. But where he's had such a terrible experience with the church, um, and religious people, and sources of power, being a corrupting influence in the world, you've got uh, Ellie, who had the whole community come together around her, when her parents were sick. They'd bring food and they'd bring medicine and they'd take care of them in any way that they could. So she's grown up with this great respect for the church and for religion. Um, who else do we have? Um, Billy's a bit of a blank slate with this kind of stuff. She's very open minded. Um, she isn't traumatized. She's such an outlier in this sense. She grew up with two very loving parents. They used to take her out on adventures. They were like tomb raiders. They There's a bunch of relics in the world, from before the Great War, and if they're not found, Billy and her parents believe that they'll be lost to time. Scrolls that are left in damp caves that'll eventually just mold away. So Billy had grown up with all the support of her parents, and now her parents are retired from that work, but they're professors in the city. And she's just this strong, independent woman who's able to go out and do all this crap on her own. She's a bit curious before smart. She's brilliant, but she'll run headfirst into a cave without thinking about any of the consequences and just dealing with the consequences as they come up. Um, uh, some conflict comes in with her. The artifacts that she's been collecting and putting in museums to keep safe, it turns out that the majority of them are from Zurith's culture and history. During the Great War, a lot of the humans took their art and their history, and their scriptures and their writings, and because of that, there's a lot of history in Zurith's world that that he doesn't know about. None of his people really know about. Um, so, from their perspective, Billy is some human coming in, stealing their culture before they can get their hands on it, and locking it away in some city that they're not even allowed in. Um, the Great War was between Zara's people and the human people. So there's great conflict there. There's also a thing where Billy comes from a world of democracy where everybody gets a vote in who the leader of the kingdom should be. I guess kingdom and democracy don't really go together. Um, but then this brings up this big ideology debate about the Candyman versus the Doctor. Who convinces you to vote for them, and are they worthy of leading because they can convince you to vote for them? Somebody offers you candy and somebody says, no, you need surgery, that's what's going to make you better. You choose the Candyman. Most people would choose the Candyman. Or somebody stokes up racism. You might be convinced that there is somebody else to blame for all of your problems, and you might vote for that person to protect you from those people. Whereas Zareth comes from a kingdom, a proper kingdom. His father's king, and he was raised day after day. All of his schooling was to teach him how to be a great leader. But he doesn't want to be a king. He thinks being royalty is too limiting. He wants to see the world and experience all the parts of it as a normal person walking through the streets. And that's an opportunity that is stolen from him if he were to take over the kingdom. I hope all this isn't too boring as I talk about everyone's backstories. There's also Asher. Asher is named Asher because you find him, he doesn't have a collar. He's covered in ash, the bend of his tail is burnt. When you meet him, it's just you and Ellie, and your experience so far is every animal that's come near you with green eyes has been the worst thing. Like, you've had to fight it or run from it. It's been a monster. Ellie's got a bit more of compassion and sees through this a bit more. She sees that Asher's more scared, terrified than angry. So, with her help, she's able to calmly coax out Asher and give him some food, and then he joins your team. A lot of the backstory for people isn't going to be spoon fed. Like, this is clearly spoon fed the way I'm explaining it now. But like, Asher tried to save a woman and her child from a house when all of the chaos happened. And from Asher's perspective, it might be his fault that they both ended up dying in a fire during the chaos. So Asher's got this guilt too. Even the dog has trauma, but the dog doesn't talk. Nobody knows how to talk to the dog. So it's a very quiet backstory that you can kind of piece together if you pay attention to a few details put into the game. You also meet the husband of that wife and child. He was a pacifist. He thought his brother was big in the Great War. He wanted to stay out of it. He thought more war only leads to more war. If you go and you fight, you're just creating more enemies, and it's better to stay at home and take care of the ones you love. He thought if he stayed away from the violence would stay away from him, and he learned when all this happened that it doesn't matter the choices you make, bad things will come for you, and you need to be prepared. So he's become militant. He thinks everybody needs to be prepared for the war, for whatever's coming. He's training people how to fight, and he's relentless. You can't go easy on these people because if they're making a mistake and you're not correcting it, then they might die because you weren't able to teach them well enough. Yeah, all through the game, individual trauma. All through the game, big overarching philosophies and ideologies and how they influence the world. Um, Everything from racism and competing religions and people using religion for good, people using religion for bad, people trying to manipulate the democracy. And all throughout this, there are these little moral questions of like, what's the right thing to do? What's the wrong thing to do? There's a time you get put in prison unfairly in the kingdom, and you're breaking yourself out of jail. You know you were innocent, and you're able to break yourself out. And while you're breaking yourself out, you have the option to free other people in the prison. You can listen to their story, you can ask them questions, then you decide whether they can be freed. Um, Now you know that the kingdom that put you in prison was an unfair trial and jury. You know that it was a corrupt system for you, but now do you get to just take over the rights of the entire kingdom and be the judge and jury yourself for these people's fates? And if you let them all free, what if some of them were bad? What if what if you free somebody and they go on to hurt people? Is that are all their actions from then on put on you? If you don't free somebody and they are put to death and you find out they're innocent, or they just spend the rest of their lives in jail, what are the consequences of that? The game is going to go in four major chapters. So any choice you make will have the option to come back to it four times to see how the world has changed. It's going to be slightly like time jumps, but not quite. It's just like so you find a homeless man in the city with his dog, and his dog is hungry. You're gonna get an option to feed him or feed his dog, or give him money or ignore him. And in the next chapter, based on your actions, if you've made any actions, the next time you come back, he'll be at a different stage. And if you interact with him on each of the four chapters, you'll get to see how you have influenced his life and his world in four different stages. And there's a bunch of things like that throughout the game. Um, if you choose to help the buy things from a merchant, if you donate to somebody, if you help save somebody, if you don't take on a mission, you see the consequences of those play out. I'm putting it in four chapters so that it can't branch out infinitely and give myself more work that can never be done. As it's an RPG, I know it's going to be almost endless how deep I can go with this and how much time I can put into it. So I'm trying to put some constraints on it. One of the other constraints I'm trying to do is build the. It's not an overworld map; it's a full map, but I'm going to use it as a kind of hub or overworld map. The way it's done in uh, Zelda, A Link to the Past, you can basically go everywhere on the map immediately. But there's a bunch of these like locked areas where you need to have a special item in the case of Zelda. And in the case of Darkness Blooms, you would need to have the right person on your team or have the right information. Um, like Zurith has a ring that can shoot electricity, so there's this ancient technology around that he can activate with that. Billy has rope and knows how to go into dungeons better than anybody. If you want to go down a well, if you want to jump over a stream, she's got her staff, stuff like that. Um, Asher knows how to dig. So there's a few places in the game where Asher will smell something, or the dirt will be a little bit different, and you can get special items through that. All kinds of stuff like that. So yeah, it'll be kind of like a hub overworld, and then in individual areas you'll be able to go deeper down into the world to explore it in that way. Not sure if this long rambling uh, video makes much sense. I hope it gives some more context to the game and shows some more depth to it rather than just pixel characters running around. I'm sure doing an RPG as my first game is biting off way more than I can chew, but that's what that's what I've been focused on. If you have any questions, ideas, let me know. Um, I think that's the main overall. Oh, I suppose one of the main parts of the game I did not mention. The I was talking about the false dichotomies that are put throughout the game. One of the big ones that triggers the whole event that puts the world into chaos and puts us into this story is this conflict between nature and the world and balance with never-ending progress and technological growth. If an ecosystem is thrown out of balance, it's almost always harmful for that ecosystem. And if we were to want to build a kingdom and technology endlessly, we would have to mine parts of the earth endlessly. We would run out of whatever the resources are we were going for. So the triggering event for this is that main overall false dichotomy between progress and nature, and how they come into conflict. And so this never-ending growth of the kingdom and technology puts a strain on the earth. And I don't want to give away what the specific triggering event was, but this is basically the world and nature coming alive to fight back. If if all the plants kill all the humans, they can go back to living their normal pre-chaotic lives. Um, so yeah, just another layer and layer and layer of these big ideologies coming into conflict, and we as individuals have to figure out how to navigate that world and how we want to shape the world that we're living in. So yeah, that's definitely enough rambling out of me for today. This will be the last video I post for a while. I am going to Nova Scotia for a month. It's my father's birthday and my birthday, and I haven't been home in a while. And then after that, I'm moving to a new city. So I will still be working on the games, but there will not be weekly uploads, at least probably until September. I do have a quick draw video I have already done, and I might put out some small updates, but I think I'm going to focus on posting individual things that I make onto the Patreon and the Discord, and just be a bit quieter and calmer for the next month before I jump back into this in September. Thanks everyone for all the watches. Thank you for subscribing. If you haven't already, hit the button. Join the Discord to stay up to date, or the Patreon. I'm going to start putting a lot more free content on there. And with that, yeah, thank you so much for watching as always, and I'll see you next time. Have a great summer.